whatever. But then, where was the will, there was a way, right? And we found a way to the common law prisoners who made friends. They were working with the warders' homes. We had no access anywhere close to the warders' home. And all the warders' staff were white. And here, by accident of history, one white guy landed by default. And who was that? That was Dimitri Sipander, who 1966, I think he assassinated Henry Fairfoot. Get up, am I right? Yeah. Okay, 1966. 66. And so I was appointed by the leadership to smuggle, collect, and distribute news to the general populace, prisoners, 16 cells, 4 sections, and to the Kulukus, where Kulukus means isolation cells, where Mandela and were. It's a history itself, you're not going to go into detail. When the shoes and hot porridge sticking in there with some mark goes down there, and that's how they were getting the news. But about Animal Farm, I had to do a little bit sweating because you have to talk highly briefly, mention that George Old, by the way, is not his real name, some Blair, not that some Blair, right? They from the British aristocracy, middle class, went to Eton College, born in India, during the war in Burma. He was with the British Indian Imperial Army, police force, George Old in Burma. And then I think he felt sick and all, he ended up in France and all that, and he went back home. But classic, 1984, written 1949. 48, 49, so, right? Historic year as well, Mao's coming to power, 49, well, you know, we all know what happened, all right? Yes, Animal Farm. I thought about it critically. I didn't have the kind of intellectual depth to make that kind of assessment in prison. You talk about Zuma, the first novel I bought, Count Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. 2 volumes, if you remember, thick volumes, War and Peace, right? And among those in the queue was Zuma. Zuma was illiterate or semi-literate then. All right, I'm not saying with any, to run him down or what. We were all, many of us could put ourselves in that category, but we turned Robben Island into a university, a place of learning. We intellectually or otherwise liberated the place, right? Liberated the place. So, literature. We had no access to literature. Took 2-3 years through the International Red Cross. Later years, Helen Suzman coming and so forth, the pressure, hunger strikes and so forth, studies allowed. Right. 66, 67. We arrived in March 64, 18 of us. Right. Zuma was in the same truck when we had 61 prisoners in 2 trucks from Leopold to Cape Town. And when the curtain was opened, we had access to books, library, exchange library, to Pretoria University, to Stellenbosch University, And by the way, Kiru, I read most of the French and Russian classics. Even, Hemingway to Jack London, Iron Hill, White Fang and all that, right? Then, what did we do in the cells? Now, it was a period of the PAC rabid nationalists, right? And racist in the sense not just of anti-white, anti-Jewish, anti-white, anti-communist, and anti-Chavez. When the bell should ring, we can't hide, we have to speak truth to power. Right? But that's part of the history process. It was, we all learned. By the way, Ebrahim Ismail's brother, Girja Ibrahim, Indian, I think the first Indian to join the PAC, he was a PhD rep in London, UN I think, UN for a while. So, being racist, they staged a play, Animal Farm. Why Animal Farm? Right. That's $1 million question, why animal? It was a period of the Cold War. The period of the Cold War, right, anti-communism, right, only the progressive world, the Labour Front, and even progressive nationalist movement, even when Nehru, Sun Yat-sen, or Suharto of Indonesia, and our own leaders went to Moscow, they saw the light. Right? Even Nehru even mentioned all of that. But on the reverse side, there was on the narrow nationalists, but reactionaries, there was this anti-communism thing developed. So they, now to provoke us, right, the ANC and its allied forces, right, they staged this play in cell C1, was the so-called section or cell of the intelligentsia, quote unquote, prisoners who were studying there, right, in that section, and Zuma and them on cell 3. That whole section was most of the prisoners allowed to study, right? That was a study section. And so we couldn't understand why Animal Farm was okay? But fast forward, it was against any form of dictatorship, but the target was us, right? So with the ANC's alliance with the Communist Party, right? You know, Napoleon, Snowball, and all that comes on there. One appeared who played like Stalin, the other one is who? No, Stalin, what's other? You know, remember? Trotsky, thank you, yeah, all that. So, how do we, and how did we respond? Not by a counterplay, but the Harry Golas of this world, and by the way, I must hasten to say, Harry was quite an orator, Gola, so an absolute analyst, right? Harry Gola and Milner Sangane, who was a national organizer of the ANC, he was arrested with a group, the Charter and the Unlawful Organizations Act, right? And they were in that section, said, no, it's time for us to respond to the PAC in cell section C1. And you won't believe it, you know. It was like the angry silence. The way Harry Groge's subject gave a historical background, the ANC alliance and Milner Sangane. You remember Milner Sangane, right? Very well dressed back. Saw me? He was always at the ANC office in Lakhani Chambers, okay? There. And responded. You couldn't get a response at all. And we smashed them. We shut them down. Like the way Yunus Karim responded in Parliament and dealt with Malema. And their brand of understanding in the world we live today about social and communism. And this morning's news, there were some hotel drinking French champagne, EFL. Thanks so much for their, kind of ideas, living in another world situation. So we responded and we shut them down because they were actually living on the ignorance of their own members who came from the backwaters or the outbacks of South Africa Transkei. And they were mostly semi-peasants or peasants. Why? If you remember the Peasants' Rebellion, Govan Becky wrote, Revolt or something, Govan Becky. After the Mkhonto revolt in 50s, where the fighters were on horseback, right? I can still remember the newspapers, vivid memory of that, horseback, and they were taking on the enemy, right? And